back to the live lounge here on day 2 of Open Banking Expo UK and Europe. I'm really pleased to be joined by two guests and two long-standing sort of friends, I guess, of Open Banking Expo. They've both been on stage here at this year's Expo. So I have with me Koen Adolfs, who is Lead Digital Integration at ABN AMRO, and Joris Hensen from Deutsche Bank's API program. Welcome to the sofa and to the live lounge here. Koen, let's just start by finding out a little bit more about your role. So Koen, expand a little bit on your role at ABN AMRO and what you're doing in this space.
So currently I'm lead digital integration, which means that I'm bringing the organization into the next steps of everything with APIs. Mm-hmm. So that is on the part of financial data access, building the capabilities that we will need for those, but also AI and agentic, new integration patterns coming up. Mm. And API security is also an important topic that we're driving internally. And that's basically all next steps on previous roles where I've built the internal API culture together with a lot of colleagues, and also the initial capabilities for open banking with the external developer portal and gateways. So it's a nice long journey and next steps in that.
Yeah, great, very exciting. And Joris, what about you? Tell us a bit more about your role and at Deutsche Bank.
Well, we have a lot of similarities, I would say. Yeah. We met actually, I think 6 years ago or something. We discussed that at the conference actually. My starting point was that we saw PSD2 as a regulation on the horizon, and we wanted to use this as an opportunity to expose our data for partners to develop new solutions for their or our customers. And this kind of also turned into a journey from exposing the first data, learning what collaboration means, to now more than 70 partnerships. And just recently I've got involved, or recently, more than 2 years actually now, with FIDA. Negotiation around FIDA are still going on. So that's a new EU regulation to expose a broader data, and that's what's keeping me busy right now.
Yeah, we definitely want to come on to talk more about FIDA. But Koen, I know you were on a panel talking about that sort of the API journey of a bank. What did you share on that panel? What came out of that conversation?
So it was a multitude of questions that I received. It was for people that are still starting in the journey. So what did you learn in a bank? And then my advice was enterprise architects. They already know often where the future is heading towards, but they have people need to listen and also need to have the courage to start the journey or to build the APIs and the capabilities to do so. So one important area was on that. The other one was what do we see with AI and the opportunity side of APIs internally and externally. It was an interesting conversation that we had on stage about that.
Mm-hmm. And if I may add, it was also interesting. There were really lots of banks in the audience, and I like what you said, that you don't need to build, or you shouldn't build the same infrastructure in the company twice or 3 times. So I like what you said about talk to your enterprise architect to make sure it's kind of aligned. There's one setup, whatever comes, be it AI or FIDA.
Well, let's talk about FIDA a bit more. Can you provide us with a bit of context? So what is FIDA? Where are we at along this kind of regulatory journey then in Europe?
It's actually a good point. I started to talk about it as if everyone knows what FIDA is. So FIDA is part of the EU's data strategy. It's designed to allow the customer to take data into other worlds, basically. There's a huge part of the introduction of the law talks about the consumer and the data. It has a large scope from like savings, credit card data, mortgages, to investment and even insurances. It's designed that so-called financial schemes should be established by the market in order to standardize or define the standards to access the data, but also access rules, liability, operating models. So it's quite, I would say, far-reaching law, and this is also why it's been being discussed right now. It's in the negotiations in the EU and a lot of discussions about how to avoid fragmentation, that we end up with too many schemes in each country, maybe different schemes, so that could easily be like 100 schemes, something we would possibly like to avoid, and with a consolidated approach and something that results in good products for the customer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting, I think, because it unlocks this open finance opportunity, of course, that we talk about. But the fragmentation piece is something that I think in Europe certainly has maybe loomed a bit large. You know, there has been a bit of fragmentation in the market, and we're all kind of trying to aim towards the same things. So how do we get there in sort of a cohesive way? What does that look like to you?
Well, I think it's a tough question, actually, and we started a dialogue in Germany. We initiated an event series we called the FIDA Roundtables, and just recently we had a big event bringing together more than 60 people from the insurance, banking industry, but also fintech, software companies to talk about what would be the future scenario with FIDA, or what could be the future scenario, what could be use cases, also built on AI, and how could collaboration actually work. And I guess it needs a lot of those dialogues to design something. That's also one of the learnings I have from attending the different panels with great people. There was one panel mentioned this morning that this is something super important to keep in mind also when you think of commercialization and the revenue model. It's not about just defining the standards, but everything around it as well, to make it comfortable to use. And so that's a win-win at the end.
Yeah. And for you, you mentioned before about the API journey that you've been on, and I was wondering if you could share a couple of the key learnings. You mentioned that was something that came up in your discussion on stage today. So, what have been the major learnings there for you at ABN AMRO?
Yeah, so I can discuss this question from an ABN AMRO's point of view. Yeah. But being on an event, talking to other banks, it's also very valuable to learn where all the banks are at, and where they have invested in capabilities, and compare yourself as well. And what I really see is that banks have come a long way from the initial investments that we needed to do for PC2. A lot of banks back then needed to look into what are APIs, what are developer portals, API gateways, and being on an event like this, it's now normal. It's normal walk the talk. What you also see is that all banks have created their first capabilities and now are being stretched by new regulations, by AI, by new security risks, to further invest in those capabilities that have already been created. And I think that that's a challenge. And also challenging to banks, because sometimes also people feel like, but we are there yet, or we are there, right? Yeah. And now you want more. Yeah, of course we want more, because the journey is not done, and we're taking the next steps as an industry. So that's from a bank point of view. I think that we have come a long way and made great steps, but still a long way ahead. I also see that a lot of other industries are entering this breed of data sharing and how things work. And a big difference from when we started is that there are much more standardized capabilities now that companies could use or reuse. That was also one of the things that we agreed upon on stage. Yeah. Really look combined with your enterprise architect on which capabilities can you then create to create a heavily standardized setup within your company. So you're up to speed a bit quicker than banks have been in the past. Yeah. And for you, Joris, I mean, Koen mentioned there facing some of those challenges that you come up against as you go on this API implementation journey. Is that the same for you at Deutsche Bank? You've come up against some challenges and some learnings from those?
Yeah, certainly. And this is why I like what you said, I think yesterday, is the nice thing about coming together with like-minded people who are on a similar journey, or basically the same open banking journey. It's also energy that you can get out of the conversations, and I like that very much. And to your question, Certainly there were challenges. One thing that that pops up in my mind is the collaboration aspect. When we started, we were wondering, okay, what's the data sets that we would actually need to expose to build a meaningful product, right? Okay, if the regulation would say transaction data, okay, we would know that. But what on top of it could be meaningful for a third party to develop a product? So one thing we did back then was we did a series of small events, one called the API cocktail bar, where you could mix your own drink of data. And those discussions were quite helpful to understand what is required. And then the next step was how to build easy contracts to get into a collaboration and onboarding onto the API platform fast. And the next step was internal understanding of the possibilities to build more data sets that we can expose towards the outside. So actually I now listed a few ones now, but keep collaboration and partnerships in mind, and that it's a good thing. That's probably my number one learning.
Yeah.
One thing that I very much value in how Joris is approaching this, and that's also in the examples that he's giving, it's the motivating, creative vibe that Joris is bringing into Deutsche Bank in having these conversations. So talking about a cocktail bar, it's also the fun part that is then being enlarged, that you're on a nice learning journey together. So even though it's regulation, it is about regulation, about pushing the industry, pushing customer experiences, new capabilities as well. So we also need to realize it's fun. And
it's nice you're saying this, because there are so many books about innovation, but when it comes to execution of innovation, there are just a few, right? So I think it's a hard process, right? And you have to keep yourself motivated, and it's not always easy. So
of course.
I think it's a nice message.
Well, look, let's think. We're meeting here this time next year. What will we be talking about then? What will be some of the challenges? Where will we be with FIDA? Maybe that's a good question for you, Joris.
Well, it's now again on the working program of the EU for next year. That has been confirmed yesterday, the first conference day. Okay. So hopefully next year we will have more clarity, and there will be a final law, and hopefully everyone is then happy with it. But I hope that we made good progress on understanding what is required in the market, and that we managed to position ourselves, that we internally started to prepare and build more data assets that we can expose, and that we can say that we are on the urge of making another big development in our open banking journey. Mm-hmm.
And besides the regulatory financial data access part, I also think that looking at the year 2025, AI, agentic AI, has been creating big vibes and developments into the market, and also new integration patterns that are coming up. It's only November 2024 that Model Context Protocol as a protocol was being released. And that you see that within the big tech that is currently creating big waves of new integrations, new experiences, new developments. And talking, your question was, what do we see 1 year from now? Yeah, it is only 10 months now that the pattern is out, and it is in all the software of all the big tech. I can imagine that a similar kind of technology wave next to the financial data access will also be in the banking sector, to get on the AI agentic vibe. Maybe first internally with internal agents, but somewhere in the future they will also join the open banking atmosphere, I guess.
Well, thank you both so very much for joining me in the live lounge. We'll obviously have to do this time next year so that we can see if your predictions came true. But thank you so much, Koen and Joris.
Cool. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.